My name is Sandeep Dhawan, and I work as Senior Director of IT at Food Authority, New York. And I have been also working on speech-to-speech translation domain for last 3 years. So I welcome you all at our discussion to learn more about the game-changing technologies. So these technologies are nothing but the information. The information we produce with such an unbelievable speed that today we have a large amount of data on the internet, and it would take us 181 million years to download. And it would take us more time if you would be using Internet Explorer, because some people do use. So that being said, this increasing amount of data, we need to be recorded, processed, and analyzed. We all have to work together to do something with this kind of information in such a way, like despite of its volume and the miscellaneous structure. But is it even possible? Can the machines or can the technology analyze the data better than humans? So by saying that, experts are joined in the groundbreaking spheres of data analytics, artificial intelligence, and the machine learning. So I would like my panelists to introduce themselves, and let's keep the ball rolling from there. Thank you.
Hello. Hi guys, my name is Kunal Saurker. I'm the Chief Data Scientist leading the worldwide partner ecosystem for IBM. I work with mostly companies like you, who are our business partners, to co-create the joint product offering that runs on IBM's AI platform, and then we take it to the market, ensuring a good product market fit. So nice to be the part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Kunal. Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard Winter. I'm the founder and CEO of Winter Corp, an independent consultant that focuses on large-scale data warehousing and analytics. We help mainly enterprise customers with their strategies and choice of platforms when they have a particularly demanding requirement for data warehousing and related activities.
Thanks, Richard.
Hi, my name is Bogdan Negru. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LiftUp, an international software development company. And we do work with clients many times either to build applications from scratch or either through digital transformation processes they have going on for years. And we do apply machine learning and AI in various of these applications in healthcare and logistics and some other industries.
Thanks, Bogdan.
And I am Jeremy Berger, president and founder, owner and founder, chief cook and bottle washer of Berger Consulting, a boutique IT consulting firm for hardware and software asset management, and yesterday, DuckTales aficionado.
Thanks, Jeremy. And before I start with the questions, I would like to say, if you guys have any questions in between, just feel free to jump in at any time. Let's make it interactive. So let's start with the questions. What I was thinking is, from my panel, what do you think, what are some of the examples of game changers? How data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning change our life? Feel free to jump in, please.
Okay, go ahead.
I can give an example. A few years ago, I was retained by this example. I'm choosing because it kind of relates to Las Vegas. An online poker company retained me to help them with their data warehouse scalability issues. Their business was growing very fast, and they were concerned that they were going to outgrow their data warehouse. And an example of a problem they faced is, so they made their money by taking a small percentage of each pot in online poker games. And their main business problem was to make sure that their customers had a good experience playing poker. And one thing that leads to a bad experience if you play poker online is if you get cheated. So they were using analytics and AI to try to detect cheaters and evict them from the platform before they could affect the experience of too many other players. One of the difficult problems was cheating by pairs of people who collaborated in their cheating. And they used advanced analytics and AI to be able to recognize these patterns of unusual play that were used by conspiring cheaters. So there's an example of changing the game in a literal sense, in that there is a game being played, poker, and they were trying to make sure that the game was a good experience, and it was AI that allowed them to do it.
Nice.
Yeah, so in my industry, we deal with a large number of raw data points in order to figure out what kind of software is being used in the environment. Most endpoints have around 10 to 15 pieces of licensable software at any given time. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the licensed software, not all the other executables that go along into it to make the thing run. And then you think about the scale of an organization that has 25,000 employees, or 50,000, or 150,000, and things upend pretty quickly. I am old enough, unfortunately, to remember having to go through that evidence manually in spreadsheets to find evidence of what is actually installed and what's being used. With the advanced data analytics that you find in products like Flexera and ServiceNow, what would take me the better part of a month is now done in a couple of hours. And all of this gets tabulated and organized in such a way that there are times I'm flabbergasted that I used to work that hard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Bogdan, you wanna add something on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just so an example, as you all know, during the pandemic, a lot of the usual things that we were accustomed with, like grocery stores being filled, and all of that was challenged. In particular, an interesting case is the Middle East. And perhaps you've heard of it, maybe not, but essentially what happened to the Middle East during the pandemic is that they switched completely to e-commerce. Whereas before that, it was, let's try, maybe it's a nice innovation, but we're not quite familiar or wanting to do that. And a lot of other countries around the world, and you name it, organizations have been meaning to, especially when it comes to supply chain, to switch to a low-touch economy. And what that means is that you want to reduce the impact and the necessity of human decisions. So, and I'll go to a specific example with one of our clients. We've been working for 7 to 10 years now, and actually before the pandemic, they had started a whole strategy for digital transformation. And as part of that, during the pandemic, they realized, look, all these issues could be reduced if we could build more autonomy within the system. And so we worked closely with their team to build AI that was powered by different data sets and sources, and essentially to allow that global digital logistics super platform they built to become less dependent on the human factor. And so you had things like, just improving the accuracy of demand prediction, and then dealing with transport capacity, less decisions depending on humans, and effectively other decision making that it needed to be done and could be done through AI.
Okay. Kunal, you want to add something? Or okay.
Sure. So we've seen some examples of how AI or machine learning can make existing things better. It reminds me of one interesting use case I worked upon where the problem could probably never have been solved by the human. So this was about a stock market regulator. They collect the stock market data, and data is really massive. We are talking something like 6 to 8 petabytes generated every day, almost 200 to 300 million transactions happening every hour. And this data just gets into the system, and even if there is one single error in the data, then in order to correct that error, just to correct one single row, they have to spend as much as $60,000 because the volume of data is so massive.
Yeah.
So the job was very simple. Look at the data and tell us, using machine learning, can you predict that, hey, this is not right? And this kind of a problem, a human could never ever figure out, no matter how much horsepower you throw at them. And this was as I said, a regulator, a massive team. And with the help of machine learning, we found certain patterns that otherwise would have been impossible to find. So it's changing the games, as I said, detecting patterns in the poker games, as well as in the pandemic, but then also doing things that were previously impossible to do.
Thank you, Kunal. Okay, my next question is, what are some of the game challenges ahead of us? And before you answer this question, actually I was reading the Elon Musk tweet, I think a couple of months back, and he mentioned on his tweet, artificial intelligence is improving day by day, and the day is not for when they will be like humans, which I don't agree with that, and I don't believe, because imagine you are sitting in your room and you are asking Alexa, what's the weather outside? And Alexa replies you, why don't you go and check yourself? or she can say that, why don't you go and ask Shuri? You spend more time with Shuri rather than me. So what happening here is Alexa, she's developing a jealousy factor. So what I'm trying to say here is, no matter how much we progress, but the artificial intelligence should be controlled under the humans, So what do you think of some game-changing technologies that are ahead of us? You want to give some examples or something, guys?
Yeah, and I know you had warned me about this question, and I had a thought, but then the gentleman that was up here just before, I think put in a really good idea about how the innovation culture can be impeded by the existing corporate activity, that you've got two things going on. One thing that I think is going to be more concerning in the future is much what he was talking about. How do you innovate in the face of that resistance that people don't want to change?
Yep.
Now, in my industry, one of the things that we're really seeing is the legal department. When you sign into a volume license agreement or a service agreement with another company, maybe like IBM, there's a lot of wording and legalese to go through. Lawyers want to be in charge of that piece. But lawyers really don't need to be at that stage. They don't need to be the ones to actually read through that boilerplate. They just need to be informed or consulted in order to say, yes, this is a good decision or a bad decision.
Right, yep.
So automating that piece, convincing people that, yes, the information is there. The decision is still going to be done by the legal department. It's just that we're going to analyze it so that they can spend more time on the business impact decisions, can be a really tough sell.
Yep, makes sense.
Yep.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, our first question.
You said to interrupt you. I think you brought up a good point that companies try to keep people away from their own company or making changes within their own company. we also recognize with our product, we have a really difficult time talking to the end users within the large companies, because the large companies are also blocking, I mean literally blocking any way to get a hold of their end users, who I think they would love to be able to talk to us one-on-one, answer questions, get good ideas of how to improve ours as a software product. How do you improve that software product when we can't even call that person? And part of that's understandable because they don't want to have people selling to them all day long or bugging them. I understand that part. But just to completely cut off communication between the end users within a big, especially a big corporation, and the vendors or the suppliers that are helping them with the technologies that should help them become more innovative is really tough. I don't know the answer. I know the question though.
Yeah, could you ask the question just one more time? Was it about
how do we get companies to not only change their mindset of resisting change? I think that was the point that you were talking about. How do we also get them to allow changes to be brought in from the outside when we are being cut off from talking from the outside to the inside? Inside meaning inside of a company.
Wow, I would be owning this casino if I could solve that question. That's $1 million answer right there. Go ahead.
Sorry, Kunal, you were saying so, yeah.
No, I have a thought there, which is like some almost 100 years back, when Ford was coming up with his first automobile. He was asked, why are you not doing a customer research? Why don't you get the feedback? And his response was a very famous response. If I would have asked people what do they want, they would have said, I want a faster horse carriages. So there is a sense in a product R&D or where we drive innovation is that if you ask a user what they want, they have a myopic vision, which is about solving this feature, adding that feature here. If you want innovation, true innovation, you have to take an outside-in perspective rather than just taking a market research or the feedback from the user. And if you can think about to anything like iPhone, it didn't came from a user feedback or any of the big innovations that we get used to. So that's a core philosophy that drives many of the tech companies.
Nice.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I have the opposite problem. I work with realtors, and they are not bashful. So what I find that I have to do is I have to weigh their suggestions, and I basically say to them, okay, we'll consider it. And then we decide what is appropriate for the greater community.
Okay. So yeah, Richard, you want to go ahead?
So to bring it back to AI
Yeah.
a little more, in a little more focused way. So a recent survey showed that one of the biggest obstacles, there have been all these tremendous successes with deploying artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced analytics to do remarkable things. And we just heard some examples from the panel. But there's something that holds back AI and machine learning from wider use. And that is that thus far, it's relatively unusual for these machine learning models to be able to explain how they arrived at a decision. Mm-hmm. They do something that people can't do. So they take situations where they're trying to predict an outcome, and there are many hundreds, perhaps thousands of factors that could influence that outcome. And so many factors that a person could never test all the combinations or analyze all the combinations. What the machine learning model does is it efficiently tries all the possible factors and combinations and figures out which factor or a small set of factors best predicts the outcome that they're looking for. And this is a wonderful thing. You can get this automated process to very quickly predict who's most likely to be able to pay back a loan, or what is the most likely diagnosis for this set of medical symptoms. The problem is when the model comes up with an outcome that the humans don't expect or can't understand, if it can't explain where the outcome came from, then do you really want to use that for decisions that affect people's lives or their health?
Yeah, no, explainability is one of the major challenge in the AI, right?
Yeah, so in this area has been underinvested in to this point. So I think a game changer that we could see coming soon is a greater ability for machine learning models to explain their decisions and explain why a decision may have changed from what it was a few months ago.
So that brings up a very good point, and something that we had discussed in preparing for this is the kinds of patterns that humans want to ask of AI and machine learning, that we are not doing a very good job of asking the right questions of what is capable of being done. And that sets up to the two gentlemen's comments there in the back about how do you educate people on both the potentials of a product and a solution versus what their expectations are, and overcome those kind of barriers. But the thing that really kind of, I think, needs to be discussed more is not just how the AI got the answers, but why did the human choose these particular data points? Because it's my understanding that that choice there is what leads to biases and unexpected consequences and continuation of there's another word. We're getting close to lunch. My brain's shutting down. Fallacies that could end up happening. We still need this human piece to look at what we're doing at the beginning of the ask and then at the results that come out of the ask to say, is this right? Does it line up with what I'm asking for? And can you prove it by explaining yourself?
Right.
So,
and I want to take this idea further, combined with what you were saying, the example with Ford. Many times there's a significant difference between what the users or the customers want and what they need. So, especially if you look at the last 10, 15, 20 years in IT, we have kind of pushed more and more towards that transactionalism of IT. We want AI because a competitor has it. We want ML because it sounds really cool. And by the way, there's somebody in the company that knows how to do it. But did we actually go back to research and not necessarily about what customers want, but what they actually need? And studying that need will take us to a better process to understand what kind of data do we need, what kind of AI solutions do we need based on analyzing that data and moving forward from that to improving how we respond to the need of the customers.
how many projects get started from the back nine pitch of the CEO's golf buddy that showed something off and now we got to do it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Kunal, you want to add something on that?
No, sure. I think I completely agree with you guys, is that we speak about all the success of the AI and we forget some of the biggest spectacular failures of the AI in the last few years. For example, this is year 2022 It is more than 10 years since I have been promised a self-driving car. It's not here yet. And I don't see it's gonna come there this year at least, or anytime in the near future. Or I was promised that a robot will see me when I go to my doctor. And he will diagnose me and my medicine will come out of it. So it hasn't happened either. And the biggest challenge in the AI is like the tech companies are good at generating technical product, which even if they fail, nobody gets hurt. So you have a software, whether you like it or doesn't like it, or a YouTube video, or you recommend it, or some Amazon recommendation gone wrong, nobody's getting hurt. But when you have to build a car where somebody's life is at stake, or do a diagnosis, which a doctor has to do for cancer, and don't want to give a wrong surgery, there is a real challenge for AI adoption. And the biggest challenge I've faced in any deep learning project is the trustworthiness. How do you build the trust in this project? For example, I was working on an image recognition system where we were trying to use mobile images data to recognize the images. And creating a mathematical model in a deep learning that works very nicely with a very clean data set is something anybody can do. But when you crowdsource the data from real users through the mobile phones, how do you know that what they are saying is in the image is actually in the image? If I give a picture of a cat and say it is a dog, my model will start predicting it is a dog. And that's the core challenge that we face in any deep learning models, language models, image models, is creating that trustworthiness, is reducing the biases, as you said, and ensuring that there is a confidence in it. I do not believe that we will get a model which is free of biases. I think that's never going to happen. Humans have biases, so data will have bias, AI will have. Where we need to go is where pharma companies are. You build a drug, you release it through a thorough clinical trials, but with a big sheet that says these are the side effects. Right now, we don't know what are the side effects of my model. We just discover it by accident. And that's not the place where we want to be when we build any AI solution.
Yeah, thanks, Kunal.
We have a question.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I don't share your fatalism with the idea that we'll always have biases. I'll use a mic. Yeah, so I don't see us always having biases in our data or always needing to if we know that people have biases and the number of biases is limited, right? We have a limited list, a known list. Can we not then exclude those biases at some point from data gathering? Can we not identify those biases when we gather data and remove them if we account for them?
Almost like trying to catch a cheater at poker.
Yeah, or maybe similar to catching spammers, right? You use Bayesian theorem.
Right, right. So yeah, I would challenge you on that, right? In that I want to bring up the old saw about foolproof and just finding the better fool, right? That we can work against biases that we know about and then work on the biases that then come next. But being, as we said, being human, we're not exactly sure where the next thing is. And will AI be able to get ahead of that curve? We haven't yet.
And it's interesting, like very interesting, because many times we don't even agree with each other what biases are.
Exactly.
And if, you think that's a bias, and I think, no, it's not, you know? So imagine technology mimics that to a certain point. So obviously you need regulations, you need an authority that can stand behind that to decide, you know, for this particular product, you know, this is what it is. But going back to what you were saying.
Well, and then let's also take into account that we can't talk about biases in a binary format, right? It is not is biased or is not biased. There's a range, and it's almost, and there's also an emotional component. So a very subjective opinion of the person being affected needs to be taken into that definition of what is a bias. Can we model that kind of activity into an AI that builds in that feedback loop? I don't know if we can get to that point.
Oh, it's a challenge. Let's see.
Well, yeah. Let's hear from the IBM guy, because yeah.
Okay, I love
What's
being
Big
putting on the
Blue's
spot.
opinion on this?
So let me put it this way: is like I'll answer it with a real life example I faced. But before that, the job of an AI is actually to find the bias. In statistics, bias is a technical term. You actually detect a bias, and that's how you make a prediction. If you do not have a bias, you do not have any AI model, strictly speaking. Now, we do not want a bias that is discriminatory. So, for example, you can say like insurance rates for young people should be higher than those of old, and that is what AI model will predict because they do less accident than others. Is that a good example of bias or a bad? But insurance companies has been doing this for ages. Now, the challenge is that we want AI to find bias. Otherwise, you give a same insurance rate to everybody, and then the old people end up paying more, who are safer driver. So we don't want that either. But to your example is like, even if I know the bias, can I eliminate that? So I was working for this big pharma company, and they were launching their blockbuster drug, like a really expensive drug, came out of lots of R&D. And what is the first thing you do when you're launching a big expensive drug? You want to find out which are the doctors I should reach out to market this drug. Ideal case for AI recommendation system. Because the option is you reach out to every single doctor in the US, not feasible, right? You have only so many medical representatives who are going to reach. So you come up with a list of the doctors based on which patients and their affordability and the coverage they have. So the model is built, model worked perfectly. Whosoever reached out to did write the prescription, their patients did take the medicine. However, when I was doing some analysis, I found out that the model was predominantly picking up the doctors in the white, rich neighborhoods, as opposed to those who are in minority underserved neighborhood. Now, here is a funny thing. Race was not included in the model. Gender was not included in the model. Nothing was included, and still this happened. This happened because in US, mostly rich people have a good coverage, so they can afford the drug. While minority communities, unfortunately, don't always have the good coverage. Now, how do you fix this problem? You first probably need Medicare for all and fix the society before you ask AI to fix something, right? So it's a very tricky thing, and that's why I said there are no easy answers.
That's a great example. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Great conversation. Thank you very much. So I hear a lot of people, when they talk about AI, they're talking about automating things. So instead of artificial intelligence, it's automate intelligence. And it's a real misnomer. And what I've done is I kind of like tacked onto that, and I've created a lot of processes in my system that automates. And it works. And any comments on that?
I think machine learning does have the effect of automating decision-making. So in that sense, it's the same as standard automation. But it's different in that the person who writes the program doesn't know what will be the data relationships that will make the prediction. The machine learning program figures that out from a nearly infinite number of possibilities. So it is something different than what we think of as kind of standard automation practices that we've done for decades and continue to do in kind of day-to-day automation tasks.
Okay, thanks, Richard. So as Kunal already mentioned, but I still would like to ask, what are some of the challenges in adoption of the artificial intelligence? Do you guys have anything to add in there? Some of the challenges in adoption of artificial intelligence. You mentioned one, like.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, in my line of work, in the example that I gave earlier, the expectation versus the capability is probably the biggest thing to get over. We want R2-D2. We want C3PO. We want driving cars and robot nurses and all of that. Not going to happen. That's Hollywood. That's fiction. It would be nice to have. It can inspire us to get close. And actually, I own a Tesla. And I want to tell a really embarrassing story, but I am not going to do it, about the first time that I turned on the autopilot, because I enjoyed it and my wife did not at all. Probably because I turned around and decided to have a conversation with the salesperson in the back seat, not paying attention to what was going on down the road. We're getting closer, but that incremental movement does not satisfy the need and the desire of what we have right now. So to the gentleman's conversations in the back, that's exactly what we've got to fight. You know, our customers are going to have an idea of what it should be able to do as soon as you say machine learning and automation or AI. And then there's what the reality can actually deliver. And good luck, because we're going to keep fighting that.
Thanks, John. Yeah, Kunal, you would like to say?
No, I think that's an excellent point. We need to know what we want to achieve, and that goal has to be very measurable and to be achievable in a small time frame. Most AI projects never get finished because they don't know what they are going to achieve, what they are going after. And we already talked about one set of challenge of taking a mathematical model to production, which is trustworthiness. But the biggest joke in the AI is like 80% of AI is IA, which is information architecture. It's like companies underinvest in their capabilities when it comes to boring stuff like data lineage, data catalog, privacy. So many of these things are still done manually, even in large, big companies like banks and multinationals. And that's where the big challenge lies. If you don't have a good metadata, don't have a good information architecture, your AI will be very slow, very bulky, and almost crappy.
Okay.
And just to take your question a little further from the perspective of factors that influence the success as well, right? Dealing with the challenges, really. I'd start with governance. Unless everybody in the organization understands why we're doing all of this, and that everybody is involved and committed to doing it, then obviously you're going to have challenges with, I don't understand it. I don't want to deal with it. Let's leave the pioneer department. These guys, crazy guys that want to try everything out. No, this is a new way of running our businesses, just like digital transformation. If you want to apply an innovative technology, it's going to take an effort from the whole organization. And just starting by explaining literally how is it going to help the customer, the organization, themselves as well. All of that is impacted. And then you've got the intentional steps taken for everyone in the company to have the skills, the resources, the tools, and to bring in that commitment, to be involved. Obviously, you can bring in technology partners to help you along the way, but at one point in time, you got to take those training wheels off and have your organization be able to run on itself in this process of continuous adoption of new technology, and specifically AI in this case, and things like accessibility of the data within the organization, acquiring data from customers, from your suppliers, and obviously there's cybersecurity concerns involved. As long as you have the right protocols in place, it can help you determine through data analytics of all of this data, what are the right AI solutions that you want to develop, not just any. And all of those things combined. And finally, the last two that I'll mention are the fact that you need to start small, especially for a company that's never done AI. It's possibly attractive. You see this big project and somebody brings this great idea. It sounds, phenomenal. Let's go to the moon. But the point is, unless you learn how to be successful with AI at a small scale so that everybody understands how this is done, get those small wins under your belt, and then have everybody chime in with their interest for those small wins, scale it from there to more complex applications. And finally, the last point, it's the fact that it's going to take money. I think we heard this the other day when talking about continuity plans, right? You need to have dedicated funds. And as you progress, as you mature as an organization in deploying AI, it's going to take more money. Obviously, you need to look at the flip side on the return of what that brings, but the money needs to be there in order to return in the second place. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Bogdan. Yeah, to your point, Bogdan, actually, I'm facing the same problem. I have been working on speech-to-speech translation domain. Okay, and feel free to jump in if you want to. And then the thing is, because right now the system exists is which converts your language to the text, and then the text converts to the speech, and you get an automatic computer-generated voice. And at that time, when the speech converts to text, at that time you don't have any ability to hold the emotions. So right now there is no kind of unified model that we are trying to develop it. And our main challenge right now is we have done our R&D part, but our main challenge is to hold the emotions, And I think, Jeremy, when we were discussing, I'm not sure with you or I think, so the thing is, some words are different in other languages, and we have a different accent as well. So the challenge I'm facing is, and my team is facing is, and my team is, we are only 4 people working on for last 3 years. So for example, when you are at the train station, there's an announcement, a nice lady announced, the next train is coming to platform number 2 and it's arriving on time, and please mind your steps. It's good. But the same announcement when happens is Chinese, it's really hard. Ching chong, and when they speak, the volume keeps on increasing. Mm-hmm. The volume, and it's not their fault. It's just how they speak. But to converting that kind of emotions straight away, without in your voice with your mission, is a challenge we are facing right now. So but if we get a success, that I feel that will be a game changer, because. Anyway, because if something that can be developed, at least the world can talk to each other in a more efficient way. Right now, I don't think if we have any way to communicate, if you don't speak English or if you don't speak any other language, it's really hard. It's a communication barrier right now. So yeah, and other thing you also said, the thing is like when we were doing research, it was really hard to find out the funds because, when you do the research, you need the funds. So thank God we got some kind of angel investors, I would like to put their names as well, Dennis and Chris, and they invested in us, and we are still working on that technology, and we are hoping that we'll get a success, but we don't know yet. But, just wanted to mention this. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
We have another question, another couple of questions. Yeah. Do we still have time?
Yeah, we still have time, yeah.
Minute? Okay.
And we started 5 minutes
Take your
later.
time, but hurry it up.
Short answers.
Yes, no?
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thanks for coming. Hey, my name is Pete Pfeiffer, and I'm CEO of a company that we've been in business 25 years. And our business is primarily to work with cable operators and telephone companies. We provide software. So, kind of our experience is, I guess, what's the biggest pain point for a subscriber, if you're getting cable service, telephone service, and any kind of a subscriber. And of course, the most painful thing is if you have to go to the dentist, that's painful. But second priority is if you have to go to the cable operator and get cable service at home. That might come right after the dentist, in terms of pain. So what we're looking at is how can we improve using AI or whatever you want to call it, advanced technology. How can we improve cable service? And so we are partnered with Microsoft and using some of their software to do that. Just to let you know, we're making good progress, and I think we've got a couple of things already out in the field testing right now. But what do you guys think about how can we improve cable service? The cable guy comes, right? We want to avoid that at all costs.
Okay. So, off the top of my head, my first question would be, what do you mean by cable service? And I know that sounds patronizing, but hear me out, right? What's the question that you're really asking? Is it the signal delivery from point A to your customer? Is that customer at their house? Are they complaining about the signal when they go mobile and they're using your mobile device? You're asking a very amorphous question, and then you've got a factor of pain, which is also a subjective idea. My uncle was my dentist for the number of years. He was very good, hardly had any pain. My experience, no pain, it's great. Is it safe? Yeah. We always joked about that movie. But, my bias is that's not a pain point. So what I'm kind of thinking outside my head here is that you have a question of what is the answer you are seeking? What are the parameters? What's the definitions of your question? And then the second part is, what kind of data points can you begin with in order to kick off the AI to help you find that answer? So, any other thoughts? Forget the clock. Keep talking.
I think someone else
It's
has
just
a question
lunch.
as well.
Oh, nope. Here, they're going to play us off now, right? That's when the music starts?
Okay, yeah, please go ahead. No, please go ahead.
Yes, one more question.
One more, yeah.
I bet my question is pretty small.
I'll take that bet.
So I was just thinking in terms of the evolution of AI. 10 years ago, we didn't talk about this subject that much. But look at us now, right? We have the Alexa, which you gave a perfect example. We have the Teslas, which can almost drive, self-drive, right? But there's also, so basically what I'm trying to ask is, there's an evolution. Last 10 years ago, somebody started, and then it's evolved, and it's got to a point where it's becoming intelligent, right? So what's stopping it from becoming more intelligent. And there is a reality that it could be that, it could evolve into a point where it's going to make its own decisions.
Okay.
We are saying that it won't, right? We have control to it. But is there controls in place that we're thinking to put in place so that we can stop that? Because we talked about biases, we talked about modeling, there's predictive, there's also supervised, unsupervised learning. The unsupervised learning is what troubles me. Where it's unsupervised, it's going to learn by itself and it's going to start doing better than what we expect it to do. Yeah. So the question is, are there any laws or things which are put in place to restrict it?
That's such a small question.
Yeah, what the heck? So, hey, tell you what, maybe what we need to do is we need to grab one of the tables over at lunch and we can continue this conversation. But no, real briefly, why don't you go ahead and give can you give a non-flippant answer? Because I reserve the flippant answer.
Yeah, the short answer is, humans versus AI. I'm honestly not too worried about it. I think we humans are a big bunch of species. And we don't even know how to define a human. So I don't know when people say you're taking over human, what exactly they mean. We don't have, honestly, a theory of consciousness, no theory of brain. We still don't know how neuroscience fully function. So we are far away from that. I think people are more aware their jobs are going away, which is a much real possibility than an AI taking over. To answer your question in a practical terms, AI governance is a new space. It is something that companies are working on. EU has passed a regulation on how AI models should be regulated before it comes to production. US is working on something similar. The US Senate, it's been introduced in US Senate. It has not gone beyond that. So AI governance is something that what we'll hear a lot in coming days. We want to regulate the AI that affects people's lives and put some kind of a safeguard like there are for cars or the drugs for the AI technology that helps people evaluate and make an informed judgment before they use it.
Right.
And if I can be a little shameless about it, so I just wrote a book on deep learning, which is going to get released in next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's what, okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Is about bringing such complex deep learning technologies into the industry. More about how the small companies can practically build applications around language models, image recognition, speech, video classification, very simply using PyTorch, where you do not need nerdy post-PhD folks doing the complex neural network. And with a simple low-code environment, you can build many industrial applications. So feel free to check out, feel free to reach out to me. My publisher is happy to promote it in the early days with a hefty discount. So thanks for letting me plug in.
Just wanted to add one quick thing. And his book is more towards about practical experience, not theory. So yeah, please feel free to check and I'm sure you would like it. Thank you. Thanks, guys. No more questions. Thank you.
And just to oversimplify this, because I think this is really important, if you look at what's been done with AI so far, it's very particular applications. The moment you have an AI that can be, your autonomous driver, as well as a surgeon, as well as a researcher, then you start asking those questions. Just as a funny, yeah. So the years, that's a big question.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Okay, no more. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists.